and welcome to our monthly message. For those of you who are checking this out for the first time, this is a moment where we reflect back on all the messages and sermons we've looked at across the previous month, in this case April, and just take a bit of time to remind us some of the content we've looked at to inspire us again and just to help us walk out and live out what God is showing us and what God is encouraging us to do. Now, across the month of April, the theme, which is probably not surprising because it's had Easter, is hope. And it seems to be something that's kind of come through all the messages that we've been sharing and looking at. The other thing that seems to come a common theme is why I'm standing here today as opposed to my normal position is because I wanted to stand by this door just here, because it seemed to be this thing of new possibilities, new opportunities, things we've not done before, places we've not been before, as we build that hopeful imagination, as we look to the hope of the future. It kind of creates ways where perhaps we didn't see there'd be ways before, and an opportunity for us to walk into those ways. So I want to have that as a visual reminder as we're looking back over the message in the month of April, and we'll get right into it. Now, we began the month of April with Easter Sunday. Now, Easter Sunday and Easter in general always has this idea of hope attached to it. New beginnings, fresh starts, the spring has sprung into action, the sun starts to shine a bit more, and we all have that sense of actually, yeah, it's possible now. And Gordon kind of helped us explore that further by sharing about the results of resurrection and how the resurrection of Jesus is the Father's yes and amen to Jesus declaring it is finished. That when Jesus was resurrected from the dead, it was him defeating death and declaring the kind of final nail in the coffin of death. The death that so long had been the definitive story of people's lives, that the end point, the final thing, is no longer the case. Because Jesus defeated death and therefore made life available for us and for all of humanity. That he opened the doorway into a new and living way, one not full of empty promises and hollow dreams and hopes, but one full of richness of peace, lavishness of joy, and an enormous hope that's available for all of us. That Gordon went on to share about how sometimes this possibility of grace and mercy overflowing is sometimes seen as too good to be true. In the same way that we might say an image has been photoshopped, i.e. the kind of bad bits have been taken out and it's been replaced by just good stuff. But the resurrection of Jesus, the it is finished of Jesus, is as good as it seems to be, and even more so. That there is so much available for us, so many possibilities for us, so many new ways for us, as Jesus declared, it is finished, and then rose again on Easter Sunday. That we then also, as part of Easter Sunday celebration, looked at how Jesus is inviting us to unwrap him, to kind of come and know him deeper in the same kind of way that we perhaps might unwrap an Easter egg. Remember all those Easter eggs we looked at and we kind of donated to the kind of people in need across our city. That as we unwrapped those Easter eggs, and as we ate Easter eggs that we may have received ourselves on Easter Sunday, that we can in the same way unwrap Jesus, not looking at him from afar, not just gazing at the box of an Easter egg, not just kind of having an idea of what it may be, but unwrapping that and getting to know Jesus more, coming closer to him, becoming more acquainted and intimate with him. And as we do, we start to experience his goodness, start to experience his joy, start to experience his life and his peace and his hope that overflows, start to experience those new possibilities that might be available for us. And it isn't just something that we ourselves experience and we ourselves can know and benefit from, but it's something that overflows into the communities and the places that we're involved in and connected into. And we continue this theme of hope and laying hold of what Jesus has for us, the opportunities, the doorways, the pathways that he's opening up for us, by looking at how we can build a hopeful imagination. And we talked about hope being this image, this blueprint, this picture on the inside of us that we build and we create, we paint, that shows what we think the world should be like or the opportunities available in the world. And that sometimes when our experience isn't the same as what we hoped for, that can lead us to become disappointed. It can lead us to become disheartened. And in those moments, we can sometimes give up hope. Or at very least, we kind of lower our expectations. We change our hope to become something more realistic. And this really echoes with what it talks about in Proverbs 13, verse 12, where it says that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is like a tree of life. That for some of us, our hopes have been deferred. We've been disappointed and actually we feel sick and our hearts are sick. That we don't feel that we can hope anymore, so we change our hopes and we adjust our hopes to become something more realistic and more manageable. The challenge with that, though, is it doesn't take into consideration God. It doesn't bring him into the equation of what's possible and what is available for us, the pathways that are available for us. The other thing that it doesn't allow to happen is it doesn't allow dreams to be fulfilled, and therefore trees of life to be planted that others can come to and eat from and draw from, that they themselves may start to hope. That Jesus is calling us to start to build a hopeful imagination. Not an imagination based on the news cycle or our past failures or our own abilities or the opinions of others or even natural and common sense, but actually a hopeful imagination that's built on the resources and things available that we find in God. That we start to paint that picture based on what we see in the life of Jesus, what we see in the scriptures, the stories we hear about people overcoming insurmountable odds. That we start to do it based on testimonies, historical events, that those things start to show us a faithful God, one who has been with us throughout the whole thing, and it causes us to start to be able to paint a picture, build a hope, create an imagination that starts to see the possibilities that God has available for us. That as it says in 1 Peter 1:13, that God is inviting us to rest our hope upon the grace that's brought to us in the revelation of Jesus Christ. That he's calling us to build our hope, to paint those pictures of hope on the inside of us based on him being the main factor, him being the main ingredient in what we're building. That as we start to do that, we start to see new possibilities, we start to see new opportunities, new ways of things that we didn't even know were possible before, or maybe we haven't done before, or we've forgotten about. That we start to see them, and we don't just see them, but we start to make our way towards them. And we start to step by step, start to believe and start to expect things to be made new. Start to believe and start to expect things to start looking like the plan and the intention that God's always had for this world and for humanity. That we start to wave goodbye to the lies of things like I've missed it, I'm too old, I've tried and failed, I'm too young, I'm too tired, I'm too unskilled, I'm too flawed. Those lies that can try and taint the picture or distort the picture that God wants to paint in our minds, we say goodbye to them. And we say they're not going to be the factors that help us build that hopeful imagination. That as we spend time thinking about what God's done, what he did in the life of Jesus, what he's done in other people's lives, we start to paint a hopeful imagination. And we start to paint it and see it and make our way towards it. Now, one of the main paints that we use and we draw on when we're painting and building this hopeful imagination is what Gordon talked about a few weeks ago when he talked about having faith in the faithfulness of God. So one of our main resources and paints we use to build and paint a hopeful imagination is remembering and growing in awareness of he is faithful. The Gordon talked about from Lamentations 3:21-24, where it says, "Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him." That it just communicates this idea of the greatness of the faithfulness of God. This isn't a small faithfulness. It's not an insignificant one. It's a great faithfulness. The definition of faithfulness. That we can rest in him and trust in him. And Gordon talks about how we can do that in two specific ways. He talks about the fact there's a power we can lean on and there's a provision we can live by. That no matter what we face, no matter what situations we're in, no matter what we're experiencing, we can depend on and lean on his faithfulness to carry us through. That we can rely on him to be our provision when we face our greatest need. That his faithfulness is the foundation for our hope. It's the foundation for building a hopeful imagination, for being able to see the new possibilities and new ways that exist for us. His faithfulness is more dependable, Gordon talked about, than Old Faithful. more dependable in reliability and consistency than something that is as reliable as Old Faithful. That his faithfulness means that we can fan the flame of hope again. It means that we can keep believing and keep going in all kinds of situations, all kinds of circumstances, even when it looks like we're going to have to give up. It means we can face whatever the barriers to our stepping out and into all that God has for us. It means we can keep going and not stop in painting a hopeful imagination. And in doing so, seeing trees of life be planted everywhere we go, that others may start to hope again too. And when we're talking about the faithfulness of God, we see it concretely evidenced in the life of Jesus. That Jesus is the picture of the faithfulness of God. He is what God's faithfulness looks like. And therefore, in the kind of idea of painting a hopeful imagination, Jesus is our primary colours. He is the resource, the paint that makes up every other colour we might see. The colour we might see in someone's testimony. The colour we might hear in a story of someone overcoming insurmountable odds. The colour we might see in the examples of scripture or history of telling us how God has been faithful to people. That Jesus is the primary colours that make up all those things. That he is the foundation, the colour, as we talked about with God's faithfulness. He is the backdrop. He is everything we need to start to paint that hopeful imagination. And we look at the life of Jesus and we see perhaps three key moments for me that speak to where our hope might be at right now, and speak to what Jesus did when he's faced with hope in that place. And the first one is talked about in John 11, where Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. That it tells the story of Jesus arriving too late to raise Lazarus from the dead. That he didn't arrive when he needed to arrive. That it's past the point of no return now, that he can't turn this situation around. That all hope is gone. And maybe for some of us, that's how we feel our hope is. That it's past the point of no return. That all hope is gone, it's dead, it's finished, it's closed, it's the end of the story. I can't hope again. But Jesus speaks to you and to me and to those of us in that space in the same life-giving way that he did to Lazarus. That right now he's telling us to come forth. He's telling the hope in you to come forth. And in the same way that Lazarus didn't have the ability in his dead body to raise himself from the dead, that Jesus is working in us now to bring our hope back from the dead. So as you're watching this, as you're walking around and going about your day-to-day activities, Jesus is restoring your hope from the dead. That he's calling it to come forth. Now the second example where I feel it's relevant to where our hope might be is found in Mark 8, when Jesus heals the blind man. That for some of us it might be that we know hope's out there but we can't see it. That we're scrambling around in the dark, searching for hope and just can't find it, looking for it in different places but can't see where it is. And in the same way that Jesus touched the eyes of that blind man and enabled him to see again, Jesus is touching the eyes of our heart that we might see hope again. That thing that's been hidden away from us might be something that we can now see. The really interesting thing about this story of the blind man is it wasn't immediately that he saw clearly. That there was a fuzziness, there was a vagueness around him being able to see. But Jesus didn't leave him there. That wasn't the place that Jesus wanted him to be. Jesus wanted him to see clearly. And so he touched his heart again. So sometimes this may take time for us to see things clearly again. But Jesus doesn't want us in some vague, fuzzy, abstract idea of wishful thinking of hope. Instead, he wants us in a concrete, confident, solid expression of this is what's possible. That we would see clearly the hope that is possible for us and for those in the communities that we represent. And the third one is when Jesus healed the lame man in Luke 5. That we find in this situation that it might resonate with those of us who can see hope, who know hope's there, but we just can't get to it. That maybe we're paralysed by fear, maybe we're crippled by our past mistakes, maybe we're blocked by the crowd of dissenting voices that tell us you're not allowed to do that, you're not allowed to go here. And it stops us getting to our hope. It stops us laying hold of it. It maybe stops us taking opportunities and walking through those new ways that God is making available for us. But again, Jesus' words to us are the same words that he spoke to that man who was lame and paralysed. Take up your bed and walk. The Jesus' words are both a command and an enabling. They're a command to us to take up our bed and walk, but they're also the enabling ability for us to be able to do that. But as we watch again, or listen again, that he is enabling us to be able to take up our bed and walk. He's just looking for us to take the first step. The really interesting thing about all three of these accounts is that all three of them had other people involved too. That Lazarus had Mary and Martha asking Jesus to come. They had those who took off the bandages and the grave clothes from him. That the blind man was brought to Jesus by people, and that the lame man was lowered through the roof by his friends. But what does that tell us as we're building and painting a hopeful imagination? That we don't do it in isolation. This isn't something we're called to do on our own. This is something we're called to do as a community. That we help one another, that we build and paint these imaginations together. That it helps one another to see the opportunities that are there and perhaps help each other get to those opportunities as well. That as we start to paint together, we'll see the new ways opening up, the new possibilities available, and then it's up to us to start to walk towards them.